me in several different scenes
Gotcha.
playing with the new HP printer.
Gotcha. So a lot of the stuff was like basically what we were doing at Kalmanson and Kalmanson, like putting together those
Videos.
the fake.
Oh, the fake. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Remember Kalmanson? Yes.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
like
that was when we did Hans and who was?
Hans and Franz.
No, it was Hans and someone else.
Well, before we remember who Hans's partner was, I want to welcome everybody to AI Affected. This is a podcast that talks about algorithms and machine learning and their effect on our rapidly changing world in terms of our lives and our relationships and our work. My guest today is one of my favorite human beings. He is a polymath, as they say, multi-talented individual. He's a comedian. He's a screenwriter. He's a food industry veteran. He was an ops manager at a laser manufacturing facility, because why not? And also just one of the most humble and grounded people that you'll ever come across. Payam Karamooz, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Russ. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny that Kalmanson and Kalmanson was like the named voiceover training studio in Burbank.
Right.
But that's not where we met, though.
No, that isn't. We met at the Groundlings.
Yeah, at the Groundlings.
Yep.
So where were you in your comedy career when you arrived at the Groundlings? Were you just like kind of landing in Los Angeles and getting your footing there?
Yeah, so what happened was I sent them a bunch of sketches, and they emailed me back and said, come and audition if you want. So I flew down, auditioned, and by the time I got to my hotel, they sent a notice that, hey, you're in.
Wait, I didn't even know this was a thing. So
Yeah.
you can send them like a tape?
I did, because I didn't know any better, because I'm in Portland, so I didn't know how the system worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent them, and actually was looking more like for feedback, like, character-wise. And yeah, they shot me an email, said, come audition. So I literally booked a flight, flew down, scheduled audition, did the audition, got to the hotel. They gave me the green light, and that's where I met you.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, I moved down from Portland. And
So when you were in class, you didn't even live here yet?
no, I did. I just moved literally like a week before.
Oh, gotcha.
In. So when I met you, I was brand new.
Just living in a Motel 6. And,
Essentially
doing
waiting for my
Groundlings classes.
stuff to show up for, yeah.
Well, I tell you, I don't know if that's how they do it in Groundlings, but I think you did it the right way, because the way I did it was just as a comedian, a stand-up who somebody said, oh, Groundlings is good if you like improv. And then I just walked in and did an audition and found out that they didn't like stand-ups.
Yeah, they don't like stand-ups, definitely, right? We got enough of that.
Yep.
But at that point, I had been doing stand-up up in Portland because, I fell into that. It wasn't like I was trying to be a stand-up comedian.
How do you fall into that?
So I was terrified of doing speeches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So public speaking was mortified, right, in college.
Oh, I was going to ask, was this in a work context where these things would come up, where you would have to make, or is it just like presenting to a class or something?
So I went to Lewis and Clark College, and very tough school, and they do a lot of presentations in front of the class.
Is that in the Portland area?
Yeah, Portland.
Okay.
And so, I wanted to call in sick and not show up and, take the D if I had to, because it was so terrifying. So I decided, you know what, I'm sick of this. So I took a speech kind of stand-up-ish class. Like you would do stand-up in front of like the group that you're with. Right?
Oh, as opposed to speech and debate, you did speech and comedy.
Yeah, so you would write some material, you'd get up in front of just the class, not public, right? And you would just do just practice, right? And the hardest thing is to make people laugh, right? So so that's what we did. And then the final for the class was you had to do 3 minutes at Harvey's, and so
so they sent you to
comedy club. So I did that, and then there was a lady, a TV host in Portland, a local television host, Helen Raptor, and Raptor. I want to say that's right, but
she was an old dinosaur of the
she's still there.
Comedy
She's still there. She was great. She was on a show called AM Northwest, and they asked me to do a videotape
So I'm sorry. So you were doing a class, excuse me, you're doing a class performance, just trying to get through it and learn. And they're like, hey, you should submit to be a regular here.
Yeah. So they told the teacher, I guess, hey, send a tape in for this guy. And so I sent a tape in. I went on the show, and 7 a.m. doing stand up is not fun. And then I ended up winning. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll get this gift card or something, right? And I'll be done with it. I'm done with it. I got my dose of doing speech. And the prize was a week at Harvey's. So
you literally just became a regular booked stand-up comedian
nonsense
out of a class.
Essentially, yeah. So, I mean, practicing for that final, I went out and tried to do, I bombed at many stand-up open mics, but yeah, ended up winning, and I got a week at Harvey's, so I thought, oh, dear God, another week of this. So I did the week, thought it was over, that's it, I'm done, I don't want to be, do any more speeches to people, and a couple of the comics I opened up for came up to me, and they're like, hey, can you open for me? And that's how it all started. That's really how it all started.
You were just a magnet for...
I don't think I was that great, but I was just enough to where it warmed up the crowd enough so that the guys that were way better than me could...
So you feel like you were non-threatening to the closers.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because if in stand-up, if you are threatening, they don't ask you to open for them. Right? They don't want to be outshined. So
it's a very humble way to describe launching your comedy career by accident because of your talent.
Yeah.
How would you describe stand-up in those days in Portland compared to like more recent stand-up these days that you've seen?
Stand-up in Portland was it was interesting. It was very much like LA. It's very standoffish. There was little groups, right? Cliques. And you're in the clique, you get invited to all the open mics, you get everything, right? You get on they used to have a weekend at the beach, and all comics would go and do writing. I think they got high and then they wrote, or did something crazy like that. But
you're already describing like an inner world of stand-up that I had no idea
really
that existed.
Yeah, so they would do these weird...
Go to the beach.
Yeah, they would go, you drive to the beach, get a cabin or something. I think they just get stoned and then write jokes and think, I don't know, think it was funny. I don't know.
So it's like the Burning Man of Portland.
Yeah, so you were in that group, and I was not. I was. No one really liked me. There was.
Well, that took a hard turn from everybody liked you and wanted you to open for them. So
these were comics. Yeah, these were comics that were not in Portland.
Gotcha.
Yeah, these were comics that are from LA, so they were a little different. I think LA, because there's so many of us, right? They're a little bit more open because you never know who that next person's gonna be, right? So nobody wants to burn their bridge right out of the gates. So they're a little more open to accepting you because
in LA than in Portland.
In LA, yeah.
So you think LA is more polite in general?
I had a better time in LA. I made more friends in LA. I was more accepted in LA than in Portland.
Okay, so then. Because I've known you for a very long time.
Yeah.
I did not know you in Portland. But my assumption, based on listening to you talk about it, was that you were like the unofficial crown prince / mayor of Portland for a time there. But are you saying that was the case, just not in comedy circles?
Just not in comedy circles, yeah. So I knew a lot. Growing up in Portland, it's a small town, so you get to know everybody, right? You walk down the street and they know your name. And although it seems like it's a big metropolis, it's not that big, and you run into the same people, you date the same girls. It's just it's a small town feel. It's a very small town feel, and so in that circle of social circle, I was great. When it came to the comedy circle, I was kind of off to the sidelines. So
was it that thing where people felt threatened because you were like a big local personality and they're like, get out of our little clique or something like that?
I don't think that was it. I just think it was just the stand-up mentality, right?
Which is that everyone's a loner who hates everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to be, there's this I'm threatened by you Versus LA, like I said, LA people know that tomorrow you might have the best 15 minutes and that's all you got, but you may get a show out of it, right? And so they're a little more accepting of people.
So this is a phenomenon that I've heard people talk about before in Los Angeles, that like very few people have fixed opinions and values.
Right.
And a lot of it is just based on really trying not to offend anyone, because anyone could be casting a thing, anyone could be running a show, and so you just kind of want to be acceptable to everyone at all times and not have a strong opinion.
Exactly, right?
So that is like a unique LA thing in your experience?
I think it is, because you want to be friends with everybody, because you don't know where your opportunities are going to come from. So you don't want to rock the boat, you don't want to burn bridges. Now, does it happen? Of course it does. But you try, especially when you're new to LA, right? You're trying to navigate that whole system. You're trying to not rock the boat and piss people off.
It's almost like you're not allowed to have strong opinions until you've built up like a personal cachet, and you're like, here are my things, here are my opinions. Now you can join my little ship.
Exactly.
And share my opinions.
And I think that's, right now, these days, it's the way it is in life in general, right? You can't have any strong opinions about anything. Otherwise, you'll get canceled real quick. So it's a shame, because, you can't voice your opinions. But
do you think, and I know that you haven't lived in Portland for a while, but was this something that you noticed, like a sharp difference between the comedy scene back in Portland back in the day, 15 plus years ago, versus what you're seeing now? In terms of like people's sensitivity and trying not to.
I mean, when I was doing sketches up in Portland, before I fell into the stand-up, we were doing sketches with a group of people. I mean, we rode the line of, we did a sketch called Osama's Auto Wholesale when people were looking for Osama.
I've seen that sketch.
Right? Yeah, it was.
I mean,
you and
I did a
YouTube sketch. Very, very, very touchy.
We parodied a cult video that was made of the Oprah bestseller The Secret.
The Secret.
And we made fun of it because it was ridiculous.
Absolutely.
But we took it to the extreme of saying like these horrible people, like racist and Klan members and things, like they're saying how people who have horrible things happen to them deserve it because they had negative emotions, and The Secret says that you draw bad things to yourself. So don't blame the oppressors.
Don't blame the Holocaust.
Right.
That all because they had, bad feelings. Well, no, that's not true. And so we made fun of that because we thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Bad things happen to good people, period. I mean, that's not because they were thinking, horrible things were going to happen to them. That's just horrible people doing horrible things to people.
It's true. We pushed the envelope so much that we offended people back in like 2008 before it was really hard, before it was easy to do.
Yeah. So about 2 months ago, I got an email from YouTube, and they said, we're pulling one of your sketches.
Really?
Alabama Tourism Board. It was a ridiculous thing. We just got this new camera. We were shooting this sketch. It was like, we wrote it really quick. Actually, I should put the blame on me. I wrote it really quick. And, we put it up. It's been up on YouTube for 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, maybe.
And a lot of those that you made were really popular, too.
Like they were back in the day of MySpace. They would put it on their homepage. And, got an email from YouTube, said, we're removing this video because of a complaint. So I contacted her. I said, well, who complained? Like, what's the complaint? Well, we can't tell you. We're just removing it unless you get legal representation to.
Oh, man.
And I thought, well, here we go, right? You can't push the envelope to make people think because you will get shut down immediately. And, this is freedom of speech. I don't know if that's...
Did I ever tell you about my history of battles with YouTube over trademark and copyright stuff?
No.
So in the olden days, I used to do a podcast with my college debate buddies. And we did the podcast for a while. We started making very basic videos to promote the podcast.
Right.
And the videos were all montages. This was very early days of YouTube.
Oh, that's
so they were montages. So we'd take images and put them to a soundtrack, and the montage would tell a story. It would usually be either some satirical thing or it would be a political commentary. And we would constantly get takedown notices because we're using like copyrighted images and copyrighted music. And so I learned about fair use law in battling YouTube. And it was always like, you know, a bot run by Sony or a bot run by Major League Baseball Entertainment Properties who's like, you can't use footage of the home run derby. And I would write these like extremely long, like Thomas Painesian like rebuttals to them, these counter notices being like, look, it's transformative. We've edited it. We don't have, it's a non-for-profit entity, like all the things that you have to prove so that you can use this stuff. And back in the day, I don't know if this still works, but back in the day, they would remove all their takedown notices just because it was a bot sending these things out when it detected the copyrighted material. And as soon as a human being gives you reasons, then they're like, oh, well, now to deal with this, we'd have to send it to our legal team. So just like let them have the thing. So,
but now they're putting the burden on you. If you want to find out even what the complaint was, go get a legal, you know, go get a lawyer to file a motion to get that information. So you're like, again, this is one comedy and falls under the comedy, you know,
rubric.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it should be off limits. You can't, there was nothing, you know, it wasn't anything where we were, you know, showing naked people or anything, you know, there was nothing like
you weren't violating any laws.
None whatsoever. It was complete comedy, parody type thing. And so, you know, at what point is enough? I don't know. But like you said, they have these bots out there and they're programmed to find anything and everything and shut you down.
Yeah. That's one of the tough parts about crawlers and bots and algorithms is like they're programmed by a human being initially, right?
Exactly.
So they're given a set of instructions of like, this is the type of behavior we want to regulate. This is what we want to shut down. Go out and do it en masse. And if anybody can get through this wall of rejections that the bot sets up, we'll deal with that like piecemeal later on. But you're changing the behavior en masse because everyone's adjusting to the bots and don't get to have a human conversation.
No. And they have no say whatsoever. The bot is the ultimate deciding factor, it seems like. Unless you want to get really, you know, if you got the money to go after it, or the time or the energy or, you know, even the knowledge to go after it. Otherwise, the bot is the judge, jury, and executioner. I mean...
Yeah, and when you have a platform like YouTube that's like 99% of market share of videos that are out there, it's not like you can be like, well, I'm going to release it on Dailymotion because, parentheses, Dailymotion doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
That's not an alternative.
So, yeah, they've crushed that. So, so what do? I mean, at what point does it get to be, you know, where everything is just regulated? Right? And then, you know, part of the reason I don't do stand-up anymore is because I don't want to offend anybody. Because tomorrow I'll lose my job, or tomorrow, you know, there's ramifications for what I may or may not say, or...
Right. And this has been said, and it's kind of obvious, but like it's inherent to comedy that you have to push boundaries.
Right.
Otherwise, things aren't funny. They're just wet noodles.
Exactly.
That you're hitting people with.
I mean, you're going to do knock-knock jokes for 45 minutes? I mean, no. And everybody's going to do knock-knock jokes for the rest of the time? I mean, no. So, you know, at what point do we all push back? And say enough is enough? I mean, this is getting borderline ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, because of the nature of this, like, corporate consolidation that's going on right now, where you have these giant entities that are getting bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. Yeah. I thought Groundlings was a great example of that.
Right.
Because, you know, in 2017, we did Groundlings before that, but just as an example, we're old. In 2017, there was like a thriving improv scene, and you can go to a million different independent venues, and there were groups everywhere. It was exploding. Right. According to a friend of mine, that was the peak of improv was like 2017 to 2018.
Right.
Then IO closed. UCB decided they didn't have enough money to do what they wanted to do, and they contracted a bunch of theaters. Then the pandemic happened.
Yep.
Second City in Los Angeles is like, we didn't mean it. We're not really a thing anymore.
Right.
A bunch of indie theaters closed. And now it's like Groundlings owns their own building.
Yeah. Two buildings now. Yeah.
They own a training center. Yeah. And so they exist.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like these like really rigid, like hierarchical, like pyramid structure schools like Groundlings exist. But like a lot of the indie scenes have been wiped out, and that eliminates,
competition.
Yeah.
Right. So you either play by those rules or you don't do it. I mean, they own it. The unfortunate part is, as you know, we worked with quite a few talented improvisers, and they were let go from Groundlings, and it's like, wait a minute, those are talented, really good people, and they're talented. Why?
Yeah. It seems like a weird part of the business model for Groundlings in particular to say, I mean, first of all, there's like a 2-year waiting period cooked into the sauce. Like, you can be the best there, and they're like, you've done so well, now you can wait for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Which I did. And then when they hit me up, by then I was like doing so much stand up I couldn't do it. But yeah, it's exactly it. And then I would run into people there who were just, they were funny, but boy, did they have attitudes, right? And you're like, wait a minute, you pushed them up, but you kicked this other person out who was talented, who was actually nice and down to earth and level-headed and, humble.
Well, these aren't values that
these are,
we elevate.
Right, exactly. We don't put very much priority on those values. So it was unfortunate because, they weren't funnier than the people they got rid of. They were just...
Can I ask you about that? Because, like I said, like we know each other really well.
Yeah.
And you describe yourself as almost a completely different human being when you were in your 20s versus now.
Yeah, I was reckless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like at some point, seemingly, you were like really humbled by life in general.
Sure.
And it fundamentally changed your personality. Again, I didn't know you before the change. But like the person that I know now is like this extremely grounded, extremely humble, grateful for anything that comes his way, like a wonderful person. And so it's hard for me to envision that before that you were like this reckless, spoiled brat kind of kid. And like, looking back at that, like how do you describe that?
I think I was humble when I was young because we grew up poor. So I was humble then because we didn't have any reason. I didn't have any reason. There was just this 4-year, I want to say about 4-year period where, the parents got more money and I lost my mind and they lost their minds, because it was like lottery winners, having to deal with, all kinds of things that you didn't have access to before. And so you lose your mind falling into like, a group of guys where, they had a different girl every night. They were flying around to Vegas every other week.
So this is just like a group of people that you fell into because you were in the
social, economic,
new money circles.
Exactly. And, their families just got into money. So it was, we were all about the same age and, we were reckless. I mean, we were literally every other week we're in Vegas and, we're $3,000 bar tab, all right, whatever. No big deal. And that's just one night, we're there 4 nights and, they're in the next 2 weeks later, we're there. And so, I was reckless. I think I was always humble and I appreciated what I had. It's just, there were times where I probably could have used better judgment in certain situations, right?
So how do you now look back? Because those times probably feel like a totally different lifetime to you.
Oh, yeah.
So but how do you look back at that? Do you look back at it was 4 years. It was almost like going to college and having a good time and then being done? Right. Or do you look at it as like, this was not me and I was corrupted by these influences or something like that?
I think everything gets you to the point you're at. So whatever the experience is, I was very, very blessed. I never got a DUI. I never, there was a lot of things I should have.
You should have, but you didn't.
I should have been caught for a lot of different things. but I didn't, and I think someone was looking out for me because there's times where I'm driving and I'm like, oh my God, I would have run this 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I would have run this yellow light or red light or whatever. 15 years ago, I would have gone around this car, and now you're like older and you're like, is it worth it? No, it's not. But when you're young and you got a lot of testosterone and you come into money and you become a little reckless, right? You're drinking every night and partying.
So this was like peak Portland for you.
This is peak Portland. Yeah. This is when you're walking down the street and hi, people are saying hello to you.
Was this before or during your comedy training?
This was, I would say this was during, before and during. I mean, I was always funny within the circle of friends. Like they call me the opener because I would, in the group of 4 guys, we each had a task we were given to us. It was not that we formally gave each other this responsibility, but it just kind of happened. So I was the opener. So I would initiate conversation if we were picking up girls, at a bar or something. I was the
which is many people's first time stand-up training is having to talk to a girl at a bar.
I was the funny one, right? So I'd say something funny, and I was the one that entertained. And then there was, another friend who was, he's the closer, right? He's going to get the number. Usually he's going to get the girl.
Right, he's the one that walks away.
Yeah, he's going to clean up. He's going to clean up after all the work you did. Yeah, so, and you're going to go home alone anyways, but that was the task. And, there was 2 other guys, and one was good at,
what did the middle guys do?
Yeah, so the middle guys would jump in and carry the conversation as well.
They're just pure wingmen?
They were wingmen, and they were also, we want to be politically correct.
Of course.
So they were to entertain.
I know where you're going.
Yeah, you know where I'm going, right?
They were to peel off the friends.
Exactly, right? So there was, they're the ones to distract the friends while the closer can get whatever he wants to get. So yeah, it was just very strange.
It sounds a little bit like you were like a driver for like a group of bank robbers or something.
Exactly.
Like
and again,
just the driver though. Like you didn't go into the bank.
Yeah, no. And the driver never got paid. That's the problem. Everybody got money, but the driver didn't get anything. He just drove for the sake of driving. So yeah.
So let me ask, so beyond the the changes of appropriateness of this method of meeting women like back in the day.
Yeah.
What else has changed about like the bar scene and the atmosphere in Portland since then?
Portland's a crime scene, an ongoing crime scene. I mean, I was just up there a couple, I want to say 3 or 4 months ago, and it literally, the town we grew up in was really, really amazing. It was clean. You wouldn't find a cigarette butt on the ground. You wouldn't, there was nothing. It was really, really clean. In fact, I remember relatives and my parents' friends that would come in for the first time, and their first thing they'd say is, "This place is so clean."
Wow, that is not something you would associate
sparkling
with Portland
clean.
right
You would
now.
never see litter anywhere on the side of the freeway. Nothing.
Wow.
And now you go and it's complete disaster. I mean, it looks like a big garbage dump, and people are living in the middle of it.
What do you think caused this like massive transition?
I think it's happening everywhere, and not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to be a conspiracy
okay. You should have seen
theorist.
our guest last week who was talking
really?
about alien psychic communication with aliens.
Okay.
So you're in good company. So
yes.
Fine.
So yeah, what is that called, by the way? That was called alien psychic. Okay, can't remember the name for that. Remote viewing, right? That's
remote.
What that's
I
what
think
it's
that
called.
is. That's exactly what we're talking
that's
about.
what it's called.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think there's some kind of agenda. If it's up to me, I would say there is some kind of end game that's being played out.
Now, when you say that, are you talking about like the powers that are like behind the scenes and like the whatever, the World Economic Forum and the Rothschilds?
So,
like who
exactly.
who was doing
so
this? What are we talking about?
here's my understanding from the readings I've had. I think that there are probably, I would say, about 100 families that are well-to-do families, generational money.
People who hang out at Davos. And
yeah, they are in the background, right? They are in the shadows. They do not, you don't see them, you don't hear from them, but they are the puppet masters, right? And they feed the money that they get or make into the politicians. And those politicians have their agendas at hand, in their best interest. And that's what's happening.
Okay, so wait. So let's run with the puppet master theory for a second.
Yeah.
What would be the motivation of wanting to destroy a beautiful, clean little hamlet like Portland?
I mean, there's always, right? If you're not living in it, what do you care? If you're up in the Hamptons and in a castle on 100 acres, what the hell do you care what happens in Portland? But if it lines your pockets for more generational money.
So how does filling Portland with garbage line the pockets of oligarchs?
Yeah, so
I'm gonna pick apart your theory, but
no, absolutely, please do so. No, this is my just because I don't know what the end game is or what their stand to benefit. I do not know, other than they're satanic and they just love chaos. Right.
So you think it's literally just the forces of chaos and entropy that are like more in control now?
Yeah,
than they used to be.
Right. You can't go down the street. Now, granted, we see it on the news, right? Some person's walking down the street and they just get stabbed for no reason whatsoever. Now, is that always happened and we're just seeing it on the news to propagate that kind of message, or is that new? I don't know.
I mean, again, I'm not an expert in crime statistics. I do know that pre-pandemic, it was one of the statistically safest times that it's ever been, just in terms of like the overall rate of crime. Certainly what you say is true, that we see everything via Twitter and all of these live streaming services, we see everything that's happening everywhere in the world.
Right.
And I think in part, humans are not built to emotionally process dealing with everyone's grief everywhere in the world all at once.
Right.
To make a reference to a movie that might win an Oscar tonight. So we're just kind of more aware, even though the incidences of this stuff might be lower overall, and we might live in the most safe world that we've ever lived in, but we're all kind of filled with anxiety over being aware of everything that's going on all the time.
And is that what they're trying to propagate? Do they want people to be in a state of anxiousness and anxiety and fear and wanting to stay home and not go out? I don't, what is the end game? I honestly do not know. I just think that there's puppeteers in the background that grease the wheels in their benefit for whatever agenda they're trying to achieve. I think there's district attorneys in place that let criminals go for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a thing.
That's in Portland.
Pacific
that's in
Northwest.
everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So why? Why are they there? Why can't we get rid of them? We try to get rid of them, but somehow magically they don't get ousted. What is that?
Let me approach this from another angle. So I have some buddies that I went to high school with who have lived in Seattle, not far away from Portland for many years. And they recognized when I would go visit them over the years that there was a bunch of foreign investment in Seattle.
Yep.
And the real estate prices went through the roof. I know the same thing happened in Portland.
Yep.
And Seattle also used to be this incredibly clean, maybe only less clean than Vancouver across the border, but still very clean by American city standards. And then rapidly deteriorated.
Yep.
What is that? What's going on?
That's again, it's the same thing. It happened at the same time in Portland as well. It rapidly declined.
So how about this? There's a phenomenon of like people buying up real estate and then just using it as like foreign investors buying up real estate. Chinese investors and others using it as like holding vessels for money, keeping the things empty. And then there's just like less housing available for people to buy because the prices go up on everything. And then that encourages like homelessness and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Is that part of it?
I mean, that's definitely part of it. I do know when my parents owned 2 condos in Vancouver, BC. Mm-hmm. And when they purchased them, this was before the Chinese started bringing money overseas. But when they went to sell, it was Chinese that were buying, and there was no real estate to be had. Mm-hmm. So, they were seeing an opportunity, rightfully so, to increase their value on the investment. So, but, as far as that declining, or making properties higher in cost and offsetting people putting people out on the street. I don't know. There's something fishy with
So
the
you're
legal.
saying
I'm looking
it goes
at the
beyond
legal.
just the straight up economic consequences
because
of foreign investment.
when you start getting into the legal, like I said, when you start getting into DAs letting criminals out for no reason, and then 2 days later they're killing cops.
Yeah.
When you're prosecuting police officers left and right, I want to, I'll touch on a topic that's probably sensitive, but there was in LA a couple people that were stealing catalytic converters, right? And then it got into a police car chase, and they crashed, killed a husband and wife in the crash, and the passenger was in the car of the guy stealing the catalytic converter. He died as well. And you see the parents come on and say, my baby was a good boy, and the police shouldn't chase anybody.
Oh, so it was blamed on the police for pursuing.
Right? It's immediate. It's a lawsuit, right? It's setting you up for a lawsuit, and the lawyers are quick to jump on it. And wait a minute, time out. What about the 2 people that died, a husband and wife who've been married for 30 years? And
So are you saying that the converter thieves they didn't pin the like reckless endangerment and manslaughter on them?
Well, I'm saying that like immediately it was, my baby's a good kid, and we're gonna sue the police because they were chasing criminals. So no longer can police chase criminals. No longer can you detain criminals. And I'm talking to everybody. This has nothing to do with race. I mean, They can detain me. Lord knows I've been pulled over plenty of times for no reason. But at some point you've got to say, wait a minute. If your baby's a good baby, then where were you? Why was he stealing catalytic converters? And what about the 2 people? He was in the car, so he's an accomplice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it seems like the my good baby thing, like it goes a certain amount of distance in terms of like, okay, well, he's just stealing parts of cars and the cars still function and he sells them and it's like kind of no harm. Well, at the point where you're in a high speed chase though, and you're refusing to own up for what you did because you've been caught and you're putting people's lives at risk, that seems like just a whole other level of crime that you're doing at that time.
Exactly. And so, when you see the DAs just release people, and then they go out and they'll like shoot police officers, or, police officers can't detain anybody, can't pull anybody over, can't do anything essentially. What's the end game? I mean, where are we going? Lawlessness? Are we going back to the old West where you just, if someone draws on you, you draw? But then again, if you try to defend yourself, you'll go to jail. The DA will prosecute you. If I come and rob you at a convenience store with a gun and you shoot me, you're going to jail. Yeah. So wait a minute.
When was the last time you were in Portland?
Just a few months ago.
Did you see any of this happens in LA too, where like the people know that they won't be prosecuted as long as they shoplift less than $600 worth of goods.
Yeah.
And so they just walk into a store with a bag and fill it up while everyone's looking at them, and then they just
walk out. Yeah.
Do you see any of that stuff?
That happens all the time. Yeah. In fact, there was a news report that Walmart was closing both of their stores in Portland this last week. They announced because too much shoplifting. Because nobody prosecutes. Yeah, it's again lawlessness. It's lack of fundamental just morals. There's no fear of God. There's no fear of law. There's no fear of anything. It's just, hey, you know what? I want a Louis Vuitton purse. I'm gonna go get one.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that, because I think, we talked about some of the economic factors potentially and some of the more sinister factors that are potentially behind this phenomenon. But a lot of it does just seem to come down to like a common moral or ethical agreement that everyone has about like how we conduct ourselves in society. And it seems like almost half, or a huge contingent of people, pretty much, especially in the younger generation, believe that they don't owe anything to society because society is just, a repeated system of oppression that's been stealing from them and killing their ancestors. And so therefore they don't have any kind of social contract.
Right.
They don't have any obligation to do anything. They just kind of take what they need and screw everybody else. So
again, that goes back to, as I told someone, a friend of mine, she doesn't believe in God. She's an atheist. And I said, the moment you take God out of it, you have no responsibility to anything, and you can get away with whatever you want because there's no ramifications in this life or the next.
Okay, this is really good. So, and I really like this, and I want to continue. I just want to say, so you're making the argument, which I've heard this argument before, that religion and God is the basis for ethics. And so once you kind of remove that, then it's just kind of every person for themselves.
For themselves, right?
Just kind of making it up as you go along.
Yeah, the more you go away from some kind of ultimate justice. You want to call it God, you want to call it whatever, but
what if it was like the code of Hammurabi's
there you go.
justice?
Okay, yeah, whatever. But there's some code, right? There's a fundamental code within our genes that says, you know what, Russ, if I stab you, that's not a nice thing to do, right? You have a family, and that would, put them, in a bad situation. That would put me in a bad situation. That's not a nice thing to do. So, where is that? Where is that little line of code that's not being read by the bot within each of ourselves, right?
So can I ask you more about that? Because you grew up, you're Muslim, right?
No, I'm actually...
You grew up Muslim, though.
I grew up... My dad was Muslim off and on when it suited him.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
My mother, she wasn't really Muslim. She actually hated the religion. She eventually, before she passed away, converted to Christianity. I'm actually in the process of converting to Catholicism.
Oh, so that's like, in terms of your family, a completely new direction.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt more in one with the Christian faith. So, that's kind of where I'm, that's always where I've kind of been.
And this is really interesting because, like, I think most commonly, especially when people convert to Judaism, it's because of a spouse.
Right.
Because they're entering a family that they want to get along with and learn more about. But you're just doing this because you feel like this just suits your inner self.
It's the right time, yeah. But I've always had it within me, right? I've gone to church with friends who are Catholic, or even Mormon church. I've gone with friends that were Mormon. But Christianity in general just, for some reason, jived with me. But once you take that, like I said, once you take the fear of God, or whatever you want to call, away, it's lawlessness. And you can do whatever the hell you want. And there's no consequence, right? You have no fear of anything happening to you. And then, you couple that with people in powerful positions that are able to restrict those criminals from doing what they do, and they don't, they let them free, then you've got this, chaotic mess.
So I'm jumping around a little bit, but I think we're connecting some dots while we're jumping around.
Yeah.
So your argument that was behind the original discussion about like the important families that are manipulating society is that something that they might be incentivized to do is to allow the crime rate to go up,
Absolutely.
to allow at least the perception of chaos to go up, because that would make the citizens more easy to control since they're afraid constantly.
Absolutely. And if you've got money invested in media companies, what better way to make money? Right?
Oh, so that's where the money of chaos comes in, is in the keeping people scared and feeding them.
Of course, and feeding them more information on the news or whatever political channels there are out there. At the end of the day, there's no other purpose other than money. Mm-hmm. It drives everything. Okay,
so let me play devil's advocate again, speaking of religion.
Please.
So this seems to be a phenomenon that's happening to what we would consider traditionally left-wing cities, right? Like Portland and like San Francisco, which are having these massive crime waves. So doesn't that hurt the argument of people who are pushing the like lenient DA agendas if the cities that they're running are all turning into fires? Like why would that be good for them?
So I don't think it's necessarily left wing. I think it's creeping into the right wing as well, right? We see it everywhere. It's happening in Arizona too. The amount of crime and homelessness and all this stuff. So this is an ongoing thing. Now the red states will fight it as much as they can.
Yeah. Or at least make sure that people are armed individually,
exactly,
so that
or
they
something.
Can extinguish the troublemakers.
They'll do what they can.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's an overall, the direction in which we're going.
So you think it transcends political stuff?
Yeah. This is something very strange, right? We all know it.
Mm-hmm. And so also, jumping back to the religious side,
please.
You mentioned that they had like satanic motives, the important family. So do you actually think that it's like an intentional breaking down of religious structures as part of whatever that they're doing?
I mean, if you want to get religious, Satan's ultimate end goal, end goal desire is chaos, right? Chaos, affliction, pain, suffering. That's if you take the quintessential definition of Satan, that's what he loves. Mm-hmm. That's what his agenda is. And my thing is, if you're in a position of power and you can stop the suffering, or you can curb some of this nonsense that goes on every day, and you're not doing it, you're actually countering that. There's something else going on, right? There's some other agenda. So yes.
How do you counter it as just an individual, regular person?
Well, I mean, giving police more rights to pull people over.
But like as you, Payam, who don't have the power to give police
we don't. We have been stripped of all power, right? We can't even talk about these things without getting blackballed, blacklisted, or canceled. So you can't. That's where you have no freedom of speech. You have to take what's been handed to you. You have no political power anymore because Lord knows we vote in certain ways, but it doesn't seem like it ever affects anything. The politicians that are out there, they're just cookie cutter. As I always say, politicians are just a used car salesman with a college degree. And now we're seeing that they don't even have a college degree, Santa, right? He doesn't even, you can cheat, steal, rob, and get into Congress. If I did that on my job application, the next day I'd be fired.
Right.
The very next day they found out, I'd be gone, right? You lied on your application. But you can evidently do this in Congress and still continue and collect the paycheck and collect your pension and fight it for the next 4 years, because that's how long they take. They'll, bury it for 4 years. So, what you guys are in power. Why can't you just say, you know what, you lied, you're out? So now every criminal on the planet is going to go run for Congress. I guarantee you.
And so ultimately what you're saying is that
And
there's no accountability. I guess that's
There's none.
from the religious to the political. There's no accountability.
There's none, and there's...
Just do what you can
again,
do to get away with whatever.
Well, you can do whatever you want, but the people in power don't seem to care because they want that chaos. They want that destabilization of government, of society, of morals and ethics. They want it. Why? I don't know. Who knows?
I would love... I mean, unfortunately, this is getting really juicy. And I would love to talk more about how they're using the tools of the internet to achieve their goals of keeping people oppressed and afraid and not free. But I know that you have a heart out because you're going to church.
Yeah, exactly. I got to church this morning.
So I hope to have you back.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more. We'll talk more about the beginnings of these quote unquote satanic influences.
Yeah.
Payam, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your time on this early Sunday morning.
You bet. Thank you, Russ. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
This has been AI Affected.
One more time. Can you guys talk just a little bit for the next time about the satanic thing? Only 5 minutes, and then we'll end it. I'll just play the credits and I'll wait when it's gonna be done.
Sure.
But what's gonna upcoming satanic?
Okay, yeah. So, given what you're saying about the direction that you think that we're headed, that we're just a scared, overwhelmed populace with reduced political power, and we're not allowed to speak about things like where are we headed in another decade?
I mean, if things don't turn around, I've been saying this for the last 7 years, 8 years, I want to say, is we're headed for a revolution. I really see a revolution where the middle class is being pushed down, right?
Yeah.
And the rich are extremely rich, richer than ever in the history of rich, right? And what happens? We saw that in the French Revolution. What happens? Guillotines come out and people get ousted. And I think, honestly, it's going to turn into a lawless chaos unless something changes rather quickly.
And that's really interesting because some people would argue that we just had a revolution. Exactly. Granted, it was fueled by the pandemic lockdowns and people feeling powerless and afraid. But then we had... all of the racial justice movement that took over every single city in the country.
Yep.
But you're saying that the nature of the next revolution will not be based on racial justice. It'll be based on socioeconomic.
It will be based on... and we're seeing it right now, right? Robberies, stealing. It's getting to the point where the poor are going, I have no way out. Like... I'm here and the next jump up is a billionaire. Well, what are the odds of me becoming a billionaire and living a good life? Pretty much next to none, right? Unless I win the lottery.
Yeah, it's true. I always say that
there's no hope.
People ask me what my goals are, and I have very humble goals. I want to be able to live a middle class life of keep my family in a house in a nice public school system, be able to pay my bills and kind of be around while they grow up. And just that is becoming so insanely expensive in Los Angeles.
Exactly. So you're middle class, and now you're well, I'm headed down. You're not headed up. So at what point does the bottom half or 3/4 of society say enough is enough? And, the billionaires have way too many billions. They're flying around in their jets, screaming, the global warming, yet they're doing that. They're spending money frivolously on stuff that could literally change the planet, but they'll buy a yacht instead. Or at what point do people at the bottom see that and go, you know what, we're not going to take it anymore, we're just going to take it?
Can I ask, I don't know how closely you've been following this, but a major Silicon Valley bank collapsed
exactly
before
the other
weekend.
day.
So I was just wondering, do you have any, I know you follow financial markets and things like that. So, do you have any prediction as what's going to happen come tomorrow on Monday? Are they going to bail out the bank? Is there going to be a cascading collapse and runs on other major banks? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, My guess, I would say that they're going to try to bail them out because they know what's going to happen if they don't.
Because under your theory, this is Silicon Valley
But-
Bank. These are all like the
Yeah.
richest tech oligarchs have their money there. So
Exactly.
you would think that
So
they would get their buddies to.
they're going to get their buddies
help them out.
to help them out in Congress or whatever institution they pull their money from. I think they'll bail them out because of that. But I think, we are headed on a slippery slope. Who knows what's next? I really don't know.
Well, find out next week. No,
I don't
know.
I don't think
I don't know.
Yeah,
either.
I don't think Chase is going to go under, Bank of America. I don't see those guys going under.
Yeah, because those are the too big to fail banks that
there's
are
just-
always that have the bailout safety net kind of built into the.
Like Chase just started charging me, $5 service fee on a savings account that I don't even move money in or out of. So, that they're not going anywhere. They're just going to fee you to death.
You will own nothing and you will be happy.
You will own nothing. The account sits there digitally on a hard drive somewhere, but yet we have a service fee for $5, and that's, my belief is that $5 is 5 times 50 million people, and that goes towards executive bonuses at the end of the year.
Yeah, speaking of which, apparently Silicon Valley Bank, I don't know how close it was, minutes before the feds descended and froze it, they gave out all of their yearly bonuses
There you go,
to all their
right?
employees. Of
course.
Just because they had the money at hand.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. That's the Illuminati. Thank you again. Thanks again for joining us, Payam.
No,
It was really
thank
fun.
you. All right, take care, Russ.